Hi, I'm Daniel Tyree, and this is True North News, the channel that brings Canadians content on important and controversial political topics. We know that an informed electorate is paramount to the success of any democratic society, so through these videos I will be providing summary as well as commentary on topics ranging from immigration and trade to environmental and economic policy, all from the perspectives of a recent political science graduate. I will always offer my sources, so these videos are a good starting point for people that want to learn more. In today's debut episode of True North News, I want to focus on the nationalization of the Trans Mountain ex-Kinder Morgan pipeline. This was a very controversial decision, disliked by small government conservatives on the right, as well as anti-fossil fuel environmentalists on the left. In this video, I will address three basic questions. What exactly did the government purchase? Why did the government decide to purchase it? And is this in the best interest of Canadians? So first off, what exactly did the government purchase? On the 29th of May, the Trudeau administration announced that they would be purchasing the Trans Mountain pipeline from Kinder Morgan for a price of $4.5 billion. This money was spent on an already existing 60-year-old pipeline running from Edmonton to Burnaby that Kinder Morgan intended to expand, but no construction has taken place as of yet. The planned expansion included an additional pipeline along the same path in order to triple the capacity. Kinder Morgan projected the expansion would cost an additional $7.5 billion, so the completed project will cost the government a minimum of $12 billion, assuming the Canadian government can develop a pipeline as efficiently as the private sector, which, to be honest, is pretty unrealistic. Next, why did the government decide to purchase it? Kinder Morgan had provided the government with a June 1st deadline by which to provide more security so that they'd be able to move forward with the project, threatening to step away despite the $1 billion already invested. This ultimatum was put forward due to the immense political uncertainty surrounding fossil fuel infrastructure in Canada, due to the incoming federally mandated carbon tax, public protest, and the recent failures of other Canadian pipeline projects. When Trudeau took office in 2015, there were plans for 3 pipelines, Trans Mountain, as well as Northern Gateway and Energy East. Northern Gateway and Energy East were both torpedoed by the Trudeau government, leaving Kinder Morgan unsure as to how their project might survive new government regulation and public protest. Additionally, the NDP government in British Columbia, led by John Horgan, has launched a constitutional court challenge and demanded the ability to regulate what passes through the pipeline within their province. It is important to consider that the Horgan government is an NDP minority, propped up by 3 Green Party MLAs. Essentially what this means is, if the NDP want to hold on to power for the rest of their term, they need to go along with a more radical environmentalist agenda set by the Green Party. Now, Trudeau has openly deemed this pipeline as being in the national interest, mainly due to the importance of oil to the Alberta economy, and in order to diversify Canada's oil markets. Currently, most of Canada's oil is sent south to the United States, but getting Canadian oil to Tidewater will open up world markets, in which oil sells for an average of $20 more per barrel, making up $16 billion annually in increased revenue, assuming production remains the same. In addition, the diversified markets have become increasingly important for economic security due to the current protectionist American administration. Other economic benefits include the resale of the pipeline to the private sector, either before or after the expansion, and corporate taxes which, assuming a rate of 20%, should amount to about $3.2 billion a year for the federal government. There are also a number of political reasons for the government to secure this pipeline. Rachel Notley's NDP government in Alberta promised only to adopt Trudeau's federally mandated carbon tax if the pipeline was constructed. In 2019, there will be elections at the provincial level in Alberta, as well as at the federal level. In Alberta, Jason Kenney of the United Conservative Party is favored to win, and Trudeau would likely prefer to see Notley re-elected, with whom he has had positive relations. Maintaining positive relations with Alberta has become increasingly important as there seems to be a blue wave sweeping the provinces, with more conservative politicians like Scott Moe in Saskatchewan and Doug Ford in Ontario enjoying electoral success. This trend could continue in Alberta and Quebec, making relationships between the provincial governments and the federal government more hostile across the country. This kind of large-scale infrastructure project may also help Trudeau's chances at re-election. Although his popularity has been suffering in recent months, a pipeline project like this demonstrates he is not against Western Canada, and being able to point to successful projects is certainly a boon for any re-election campaign. On the other hand, Trudeau must be careful to avoid rolling over the interests of British Columbians, as there are currently 18 sitting Liberal MPs from the province, seats that the Liberals cannot afford to lose. Finally, is this in the best interest of Canadians? In short, I would say no. The purchase of this pipeline is not in the best interest of the Canadian taxpayer. Regardless of one's stance on pipelines, which is in itself a contentious argument, I would argue that the nationalization of the Trans Mountain Pipeline is an economically irresponsible decision that exposes taxpayers to unnecessary risk while breaking more than one of Trudeau's election promises. I understand why the government chose this route. It was probably the simplest way of eliminating all uncertainty and ensuring that the pipeline would ultimately be built. Unfortunately for taxpayers, this decision was incredibly costly, especially compared to alternatives. First off, the federal government already has jurisdiction over interprovincial matters, including interprovincial infrastructure. With stronger leadership, this problem would have never manifested in the way it did. It is simply outside of BC's jurisdiction. In terms of less costly alternatives, a week prior to the government's decision, Independent Senator Douglas Black tabled Bill S-245, which would have made the pipeline officially in the national interest. This would have given the federal government yet another legal tool to eliminate political uncertainty at no cost, allowing Kinder Morgan to move forward on their project as planned. This bill could have easily and immediately been enacted by the Liberals, but never made it past second reading after being tabled in the House by a Conservative MP. This move by the government violates a number of campaign promises, including those generally around Indigenous reconciliation, considering the widespread opposition to the pipeline among Indigenous groups in BC, but more directly violates Trudeau's promise to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. Surely the government views a multi-billion-dollar pipeline purchase and plans to further construct fossil fuel infrastructure as a public subsidy. This decision will disappoint environmentalists across the country and earn Trudeau criticism from notable environmentalists like Naomi Klein and Bill McKibben. While Finance Minister Bill Morneau suggests this will be a financially lucrative decision, I have my doubts. The government has made it explicitly clear that they intend to sell off the project as soon as possible. This means the taxpayers will not see any of the expected profits made by the pipeline, other than tax revenues which could have been put towards green initiatives in order to achieve the balance of environment and economy that has been a central rhetorical position of the Trudeau government. But instead, these revenues will go into paying back the money invested in the project. I expect the private sector will take advantage of these honest intentions, making lowball offers on the project and reducing the government's potential profits. The government will have little choice but to take what they can get, likely wanting to offload the controversial asset for PR reasons, as well as reasons associated with risk, including obstacles to construction and potential oil spills. I would not be surprised if the government was forced to sell this project at a loss. The government should have left these risks to the private sector, wherein it was important for the government to eliminate political uncertainty and to instill confidence in investors of Kinder Morgan or any other company interested in investing in major projects in Canada. I fear the government has accomplished the exact opposite. What company would be interested in investing in Canada after seeing the only way a project can move forward is through complete government intervention? The federal government needs to provide a stable business environment in which investors have secure expectations, not simply step in to get the job done while allowing the taxpayer to foot the bill. Instead, the government has not only shaken investor confidence, but likely also emboldened protesters who now get to oppose nervous Liberal MPs facing re-election as opposed to a faceless Texas-based oil company. Let me know in the comments what you think of the Trudeau government's decision to nationalize the Trans Mountain Pipeline, or what you thought about the video in general. Thanks for listening, and subscribe to stay engaged with controversial Canadian politics.